So this is the iPhone 16 Pro Max. I've had this beautiful large iPhone since 8 months ago, since it came out in September of 2024. But then a few months later, the exciting S25 Ultra had launched, and it's been a joy to use. We're just about at mid-2025 here, coming up in a couple of weeks in June. I'll be covering WWDC at that point, so I'm going to cover this now, give you my mid-year update, because not much is going to change in that period. We might get an update in early June, but other than that, not much is going to change. But iOS 19 is going to change the landscape here for iPhone. I want to start with the very first section, and that is going to be the price. The Samsung phone is technically a higher priced phone. However, if you trade your last year's Ultra, you get a massive discount on these phones. If you trade the previous Ultra, even like at S22, S23, you get a big discount as well. So usually I think most people aren't going to pay the full retail. But if we are just talking price for price, the Samsung does retail about $100 more. But the iPhone, I usually don't see any discounts. We do get trade-in values though. So you can trade in at store. You can trade in your phone or online. But Samsung's online trade-in is discounted instantly, but that makes sense because they don't really have a lot of retail stores, so it makes sense that it's instant. But usually I find that I pay more for iPhone. I feel like I get less trade-in value. I usually get these for cheaper, but that doesn't make it necessarily much less. Now, for the prices that they cost, I do think they both do offer quite a bit. So they kind of do command their price tag because they are giving you professional level cameras. They are giving you the top of the line build quality, the biggest, most brightest, beautiful displays on the market. So you are getting computing power that can even rival and surpass a lot of laptops in these phones. So they definitely feel like they command the price tag, but that doesn't mean it's worth it for everybody. But the Samsung feels like I get a bit more for the money. I get the S Pen, even though it's not the BLE, I understand. I still get an S Pen. I get triple cameras with 100 times zoom. I get this huge 6.9-inch display over here. So essentially, and with the iPhone, I get the biggest and baddest iPhone on the block. I do get bezel-to-bezel display, absolutely gorgeous over here. So I do feel like both of them are commanding their price tag. Mid-2025, when it comes to the build quality though, which one do I find better? And the answer is neither. I kind of pick these up and I just feel like one has a little bit more rectangular feel. Both have flat edges, so both are very easy to hold here in the hand. The Samsung definitely rounded the corners a little bit more. However, it still retains its own unique look right there. The iPhone's still a very, very curvy phone up here in the corners like this, a little bit rounded. I should say rounded, more rounded here. So the iPhone kind of feels a little nicer in the palms, I would say. It's also quite smooth here at the edge of the product, so I definitely do like that. But generally, this is a huge iPhone by comparison to even some of the previous 6.7s. Now, I find the Samsung S25 Ultra to be really easy to hold on the edges, and it's so flat now. You could actually stand this thing up like so, and it usually doesn't fall over. So it's a pretty flat edges, flat all the way around, but still kind of has its rectangular shape. It's comfortable, and it's lighter to hold. So this build quality feels just, I would say, a notch above the iPhone. It just feels a little bit lighter weight, a little bit sleeker, just slightly more modern. So, and I do like the punch hole versus dynamic island. It's a lot less obtrusive in your face. So to me, the build is slightly ahead on Samsung. Some people disagree, but I think Apple needs to do something different this year. They definitely do. This design is just, it's starting to feel like pretty aged, but this display is gorgeous with the bezel to bezel. But they did that as well here on the Samsung. They went bezel to bezel, but really the Samsung S25 Plus is where you really start to see the huge updates when it comes to the build quality. So let's talk about their displays. Both of these are gorgeous panels. They're both really large, and they're my favorite two recommendations when it comes to media consumption for slab style phones. What's crazy though is a lot of these mid-range phones are starting to get nice displays like this as well. But where these still tend to shine is especially on the Samsung anti-reflective properties. I know it sounds like you keep hearing that, but you have to actually put these side by side in person to actually see that difference. It's pretty glaringly noticeable. And I say glaringly because the glare is pretty obvious on the 16 Pro Max. It's even worse for mine because I put a screen protector like a glass screen protector on here, but it tends to, dynamic island is kind of big. It can get in the way of some content. The Samsung display to me just looks better. It's the one I want to use on watching media and stuff like that. Some people disagree. They think the colors look off and they like the color calibration of the iPhone, which I tend to, I get where you're coming from. There is a nice accuracy. Content is displayed very, accurate on the iPhone, but the Samsung just has a level of pop, a level of vividness, a level of off viewing access angles that is just unparalleled. Like, it just looks better than most displays out there to me. It kind of reminds me of some of those beautiful OLED TVs you'd be seeing at Best Buy or something like that. It just looks stunning. The iPhone looks great as well, but it just doesn't do it for me the same way the Samsung display does. Maybe because it's been kind of the same display, just getting a little bit bigger over the years, whereas the anti-reflective started on the S24 Ultra and got even better here on the Samsung. The deep blacks, I mean, look at that. That doesn't even look as black as that. That is deep saturation over there. Also, they have a vivid mode to tweak it up, but both are very vivid and they pop. Personally, I would say for accurate colors, I do tend to prefer the iPhone, but for media consumption and constant screen use, I think the Samsung is the better option. Also, I love how it takes advantage of the display. You can see how we can use the landscape view. This is very, very something that I tend to dislike about the iPhone here, mid 2025, is portrait mode. Why am I using portrait mode for the display still? Like, it's 2025, Apple. What the heck is this? And this is basically the only multitasking iPhone really does, is their little pop view for YouTube. But generally, I do find both of them to be very nice. I do have to say, though, that the Samsung S25 Ultra does have much thinner bezels than it used to. But the iPhone already had those on the 16 Pro Max. You can see ultra razor thin bezels right there. Now, if you want to get the S25 Plus, it'll be similar as well with razor thin bezels. But both of these do employ really smooth panels. However, the more impressive one to me has been the speed of animations combined with the stability, combined with the fast scrolling. The Samsung feels like a rocket of a phone. It's just so fast with the 8 Elite for Galaxy and combining all those other elements. Whereas Apple has very fast performance with their chip and very smooth ProMotion, but it's slowed down a little bit by its slower animation speed. In addition, there's been a little bit buggier than I used to experience with iPhone, so it kind of like can not feel as fast as some of these Android phones. So I would say generally, if you are comparing them side by side, the Samsung feels like not only the more vivid panel, but also the faster phone to use with the way it displays animations and stuff like that. Sharpness as well is a bit higher on the Samsung as well. It's a little bit sharper, and you can tweak these resolutions, which gives you a little bit more user control. Over here, if you go into display, you get your normal suite of features down in here, but you actually can go over here to accessibility. Hold on. Accessibility. If you go to display, you can tweak a little bit more here with the display. So there is a nice level of control on both, but I would say the Samsung gives me control over things that are a little bit more granular on the display. At the end of the day, both of them are competing neck and neck, and I don't think you'll miss one phone over the other depending on which one you go with. But I personally feel like the Samsung phone has the better display. That's just the way I feel after all this time. I keep looking at it and I'm like, wow, that is so less glare. Oh, I turned it this way. Oh, that's nice. I get to use it in this landscape mode the way I would expect it to turn, on the main screen. Then I'm like, oh, if I go ahead and go into settings and I want this thing to look more like a regular panel, I'm just going to go down here and put it in natural mode. I want it to pop more. I'm going to vivid. Oh, it's a little bit off with the colors. Let me go to advanced settings and I'll tweak the reds and the greens and the blues the way I want them. Oh, it's a little bit too vivid. Let me bring it down a bit, but I just want some vividness. There you go. Oh, you want it really vivid? Tweak it all the way up. Somebody said it looks weird because it's an 8-bit display. I don't care about 8-bit, 12-bit, 10-bit. I'm telling you how I'm experiencing what the display looks like. And it's just the bottom line. It's sharper, less reflective, and it just looks better for watching movies and stuff of that sort. Whether you agree with me or not. I mean, it's really your decision whether you want to pick one or the other. But I'm saying at the end of the day, Samsung is a leader in display for a reason. Although I do tend to prefer both of these when it comes to just having one of the best displays on the market. They are both freaking amazing. All right, when it comes to software, iPhone is running the iOS 18. I think it's going to change a lot with iOS 19. Super stoked about next month. I cannot wait to cover iOS 19 on this channel. So stay tuned. We are going to be covering the main features. I'm going to do a how does it run series on some older phones to see if it can keep up with the times. Older iPhones like iPhone 12, 13. We'll see if those can hang with the latest. But you know, we did get some nice customizations here. Large icons, different widgets support, and some ability to hide applications. We also have some customizations here in App Store, but generally the core experience of iPhone I think remains the same. It's a grid of icons, and Apple doesn't want to mess with success too much. They have an incredibly huge following. Like, why would they want to blow it and mess it up? They have to take very calculated risks when they make changes, and they have extensive research and development before they make any of these changes. I'm pretty sure they're not just going to just make a random change because some YouTuber, including me, makes an opinion or a comment. So yeah, I'll call myself out on that one. They're not just going to change it because we have a YouTube channels and even blog writers, and they're not just going to change it because a few people say that. A lot of people got to be demanding this, or the market's got to like push them with their other feature set. So I think that we're going to see maybe Vision Pro like looks, but generally iOS still the core experience is the same. Samsung's One UI 7 has changed up. We now have vertical app drawer, and it feels more natural to just kind of scroll up. I do feel like it feels a little like doom scrolling when I'm going through this page now. The horizontal kind of like made me pause a little bit when I was going more horizontal over here. Also, if you go to the custom order, you can still go horizontal, but then I got to customize it. It should be alphabetical, but it's not. So I wish it was going a little bit more alphabetical like that, but it tends to just put stuff wherever because it is customized. But if we go to alphabetical order, is going to be in the vertical tray. We also have that little now bar. The inclusion of the AI features on the Samsung are just a little bit more advanced, a lot more to play with. This phone to me is way more fun to use. It's way more entertaining to use, and it has stuff that's actually kind of smart and usable. Also, all the controls up here are pretty nice to use. You can choose whether you want to process the data on device for your intelligence. In addition, they still retain some of the classic theme store options, Galaxy themes and all that jazz. So technically, this phone really doesn't get boring, for sure. If you want to switch things up, that looks kind of like iOS, those icon packs I just clicked. But really, you can really bring this phone to be essentially your own, and then combine that with the fact that we do have launchers in here. Even if you want a minimal launcher, you're getting tired of the distractions, you can do that. Like a minimalist phone, for example, you want a Microsoft style, you can do that. You want Nova like back in the day, you can do that. You want O launcher, this is not a sponsor for none of them, but you can do that. Combine that with the fact that you have Gemini built in on here, smarts right at a finger press away right there. This phone is freaking loaded, dude. Top that off with this right here. Get the S Pen out. And then on top of that, you can do all this stuff. Of course, you lose those BLE, but I think we'll bring it back here next year. This phone is, it feels like they thought of everything. Like, this phone just doesn't let me down in no way, shape, and form. But where it does let me down is software updates. Not this one particular, but Samsung in general dropped the ball on One UI 7 for S24 Ultra. So it makes me a little bit iffy. Like, are they really going to match Apple with the long-term support? Like they be saying 7 years and stuff of that sort. I don't know, because we go S24 Ultra, we're waiting, and then we had to pause the update, and then we're waiting again. That was ridiculous. So I want to see Samsung really come neck and neck with Apple with the same updates. They do still do great monthly security patches, but when I'm talking about the major updates, everybody's getting the major updates at the same time. I know this is difficult because we are looking at Android, and Samsung's more global with the rollout is very fragmented and global. But you know, come on, like, you're selling millions and millions of phones. Like, we can invest some in getting these updates to be on time. Of course, we are going to be waiting on Google's Android, but at the same time, you know, usually if Android's been out for a little while already on the Pixel, you know, it would be nice to see it on Samsung a month or two later. That would be really good. So that's where iOS still shines, is those software updates though. But the communication aspects, especially in the US, the FaceTime and iMessage, it's still hard to beat. The ecosystem polish, the developer bias towards the App Store, especially again here in the US, is definitely something to speak of. It really is a true advantage to the iPhone. Also, resale value tends to hold up very well due to the demand for iPhones in the United States. So definitely, I find the iPhone to still have a lot of things over this device. I also find it a little bit more simple to use. I mean, I know it's not as feature packed, as feature rich as S25 Ultra, and not as impressive all across the spec sheet, but in the real world use, it feels like an appliance. It feels like something I don't got to think about. I just turn it on, and I know people who haven't been using iPhone for a while could say that about Samsung as well. And I feel the same way about Samsung. I could turn this on, not even think about it, know how to use it. I've been using Samsung since the original S line. So, you know, I get where you're coming from. But I do find that when I'm using Samsung, that I do have a few more hoops to jump through in terms of, like, I got to set up things the way I want them. It's a little bit more time it takes me to get it set up the way I want it set up. Whereas the iPhone, it's just kind of like log in, your apps are on the home screen, let's rock out. Like, that's kind of how it feels. So that's just something I wanted to mention. Now, moving on to the topic of performance, mid 2025, we got to talk about this. I understand performance is not the main end all be all these days. I mean, even mid-ranger phones are really showcasing that performance has matured to the point where you don't really need the highest end anymore, depending on who you are. But personally, for me, as a creator of this channel and someone who's trying to get these videos out quick, I need performance, fast, ideas jot down. I don't need my Google Keep. I don't need my Apple Notes. I don't need things lagging up, crashing out, bugging out when I'm trying to get business done. So for, you know, certain people, it definitely is important. For people who are relying on this for their work, you know, police and other people, you know, that definitely are in businesses where it's crucial for stability and strong performance, I do think this is important. But for the casual daily user who's just using it for messaging, camera, and just regular use, who is not relying on this for end-all be-all tasks or for very prioritized tasks, then yes, these are overkill for you. In addition, we do look at cameras that are at the pro level. And while they're not necessarily needed, you know, if you're going to keep the phone long term, it's going to be hard for these to feel like bad quality ever. So I like that for the long term. Samsung tends to impress me a little bit more for its versatility of the camera. But if we take a look over here at Pro Video, Pro Mode, Expert RAW, you got a lot to play with. In addition, you can go into photography as your main domain and use something like the S25 Ultra with log video recording and all this. I mean, this is a camera replacement here, and you could edit really precisely with the S Pen. iPhone is no different. They have some of the best camera apps in the world, along with some of the most reliable video and really good video. Both employ 4K 120, so slow-mo is great. But generally, the iPhone to me is a more pick up and go type of phone. It's more consumer grade to me, while having an addition of pro features. So that's really how I look at it. If you don't use the pro features, it feels like a consumer grade iPhone camera, but really good quality. If you use the pro features, so if you go into the camera settings, you'll see we have different efficiency modes, enhanced stabilization, HDR video. You can lock white balance. You go down here to these photo modes. You got Pro RAW Max, so Apple ProRes. So when you start to dive into the area of photography, videography, and you want to get serious about it, you can do that. But if you just leave everything on default, you can just use the iPhone like a consumer grade camera, and it's really good at that. Both of them have pretty respectable front-facing cameras, but mid 2025, I tend to prefer the skin tones of the iPhone. And over here on the Samsung, I tend to prefer the look of the sharpness. I think it's a little sharper, but a little soft as well. It's kind of like, it's more pleasing aesthetically on the Samsung's self camera, but the iPhone has more realistic details, maybe a little bit more accurate skin color. So it really comes down to your personal preferences on that. So when it comes to the battery life, the iPhone has been better at this one particular area, and it really makes me mad that the Samsung still hasn't fixed this, and that is standby time. When I put this phone down, lock the screen, don't come back to it, this battery is better for me. I find it to drain less. The Samsung doesn't drain a lot until it drains a lot until it gets to 90. Then it like slows way down. and it can last all day easily too. These are both powerhouse phones. A couple of updates have slowed it down, but it has adjusted to my use now. It lasts a very long time, but I do find it some of the battery just drains when it's in my pocket a little bit more than some other phones I've used, but it's not substantial. Once it gets under 90, it slows way down. At the end of the day, you can watch battery tests. It really depends on the user, what's loaded on their phone, how they use the phone. I can say I do experience almost the same type of experience with these. Both of them easily can last a day and a half with medium to heavy use. So they're really, really strong. I would like to see 2-3 days phones, and these can do that. If you are like barely touching them, barely using them, they can go 3 days. But if you want a really, really long battery life and you're a heavy user, both of these are still that 1.5 kind of day phone, which is respectable. But the iPhone being better than prior versions and the Samsung being way better than something like my S21 or S22 Ultra. Now, when it comes to extras, I always do mention Samsung DeX, and I'm going to mention it again because it is something that I use. I actually use Samsung DeX on my S25 Ultra, and I do miss it when I'm going over to the iPhone. I'm like, I don't got that feature anymore. I also like the ability to do all the split screen and pop view, which I've discussed on this channel multiple times before. That's still holding as a pro for the Samsung here. I also like the secure folder. It is a pretty nice private suite. And I do like how Samsung does have a nice ecosystem as well. I do like these little things you could change, like the panel settings and things of that sort. I also like that they do have, of course, the S Pen still available. I do like that they do have if I go down in here, they have like more advanced features than you'll find on some other phones. So like you'll find things like Labs, for example, which will allow you to do a couple of things in here. I do like that they do have their own S Pen features on here. I do not like that we got rid of BLE, which I've mentioned like 3 times already. But I like these just motions and gestures features. So they got quite a few extras that are pretty fun to play around with on the Samsung. When it comes to extras for the iPhone, I feel like the extras really come down to basically the emergency SOS and the satellite texting and stuff of that sort. There's not too many extras. We can plug this into a monitor and display the iPhone screen. And I do like the handoff feature with the Mac, where basically it will display the iPhone screen on the Mac. That is pretty sick because you can be working on whatever you're working on and the screen can be on your Mac at the same time. So ecosystems are very important here. You can do that with the Samsung as well on a Windows laptop. But I always find that using the Samsung phone with a Windows laptop feels like I'm on 2 separate software. I like using the Samsung phone with like the Samsung Tab S10 Ultra, with the Samsung Galaxy Watch, with the Buds. It feels more all Samsung. But I do feel like Apple's still winning in the ecosystem game. So where do we stand in mid-2025? Which one would I pick right now? And honestly, I have to say, mid-2025, owning both of these, the Samsung is the better phone, I think, right now. Like, I think they're ahead of Apple right now. They do have better. That doesn't mean I personally like them better. I like both of them basically the same. That's why you see me cover both brands a lot on the channel, because I've started with these 2 brands and I've stuck with these 2 brands for the most part. I've dipped my toes in many others as well, but these 2 have been the top 2 for me. But you can see that the Galaxy just has a faster chip. It seems to perform more stable, a little bit better. I think it's a more useful tool as a phone. And I like that it does have more customization, but that's not really the biggest issue. I really do like that the camera is so loaded with like so much features. It just feels like I have everything in one phone and I don't need much more. It just feels like everything in the kitchen sink, and that feels really great for when you have an S25 Ultra. Every single phone on the market I feel like is missing something, including the iPhone. But using the iPhone, I've been very happy with a couple of things with this one. They really matter a lot for this device. Improved heat management, but there's no vapor chamber, so it's still not as good as the Samsung, but still. Good thermals, really good battery life. This has been very impressive on the 16 Pro Max. Reliable camera performance, but not the most reliable camera control button. Sometimes I'll get a black screen pressing that. I don't like that. I hope that doesn't happen in future updates. But it's basically the best you can do, but this feels like a smartphone. This feels like a whole computer in your pocket. The iPhone does great battery life, great screen, really nice look to it and a great ecosystem to back it up. That ecosystem is very strong sticking point there still for the Pro Max. But both these are still very large phones, so if you're not looking for massive devices, I would steer clear of both of these. But still, these to me are still the two best in the game right now here in mid 2025. If you found this video helpful, entertaining, informative, maybe helped you make a purchase decision, or it was just totally for enjoyment, you like to talk about this topic, you like to discuss it, I'd like to hear what you got to say down below in the comments. Thumbs up if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you all in the next episode. Nick here. Be sure to be well, and peace.